Have you ever stopped to think about how those small, everyday things we do can somehow lead to absolutely life-changing results? Well, today, we're going to dive into a story that's all about that. How tiny, consistent efforts can build a massive side hustle empire.
So let's just start with a number that kind of makes you stop in your tracks. $245,000. That is the actual income Lillian Zhang pulled in from her side hustle in just 1 year.
And here's the real kicker. That incredible six-figure income, that wasn't even her main gig. No, she was earning that while holding down a super demanding, full-time job in the tech industry.
So, it all leads to the big question, right? How in the world did a 25-year-old build such a wildly successful business on the side? And as you're about to see, the answer goes way deeper than just working hard. To really get what drove her, we've got to go back to the beginning. See, the real motivation behind these numbers, it's deeply personal. It's rooted in her childhood, growing up with a feeling of scarcity in one of the richest places on the planet.
This quote from Lillian herself really just says it all. For her, this was never about chasing luxury. It was about escaping a feeling of financial insecurity that she grew up with every single day.
You know, she remembers hearing her immigrant parents argue about money, and the anxiety at the center of it all was really simple but so powerful. The fear that one day it could all just be gone. That feeling? That became the fuel for everything that followed.
So you have this perfect storm of factors. You've got her growing up as the only child of immigrants right in the heart of Silicon Valley. And she saw this huge wealth gap up close. While her friends' families all owned big houses, her family lived in apartments. So she made a promise to herself. She was not going to live with that same anxiety. And more than that, she wanted to be in a position to give back to her parents.
And that powerful motivation, it fueled an absolutely incredible work ethic. This wasn't just some vague dream. It translated directly into thousands and thousands of unseen hours of work. And it started when she was really young.
Her journey was anything but an overnight success. I mean, she started her first business back in middle school, sewing and selling plushies. By the time she was 12, she was already using YouTube to market them. And as a teen, she was running e-commerce businesses. She was building this foundation for years.
And we're not talking about just a hobby here. From all those childhood business ventures, she figures she earned around $15,000. I mean, that's a serious head start for anyone, let alone a kid who's also trying to balance school.
That same work ethic she developed as a kid, it carried right on into her adult life. This chart really puts it all into perspective. An average full-time work week in the US is about 40 hours. Lillian, on the other hand, consistently puts in 60 to 70 hours a week between her day job and her side hustle.
And she's incredibly honest about what that takes. When she's asked about work-life balance, she says flat out that she doesn't really believe it exists. For her, getting to this level of success meant she had to accept that sacrifice.
So how does she keep that up without just completely burning out? Well, this is where we get to the core philosophy that changed everything for her. It's not just about working hard, it's about working smart, and it's all guided by one really powerful idea.
And that big idea is compounding actions. The easiest way to think about it is like compound interest, but for your efforts. The whole concept is that small, consistent actions don't just add up, they actually multiply. They build on each other to create these huge, sometimes totally unexpected results down the road. It's the secret ingredient that turned all her childhood hustles into real-world skills.
This is her mantra. It's not about waiting for some big burst of inspiration to hit you. It's about the raw discipline of just showing up and doing the thing, day in and day out, especially when you don't feel like it. It's the simple, unglamorous act of repetition that builds unstoppable momentum.
Okay, so the philosophy is powerful, but how does it actually work in the real world? Well, it all comes down to the practical, actionable systems she uses to manage her time and energy, which is what makes those 70-hour weeks even possible. Her key strategy is a system called task batching, and this is such a perfect example of compounding in action. Instead of breaking up her focus by cooking a meal every single day, she meal preps in one big block of time. Instead of letting emails constantly interrupt her, she handles them all at once. The whole point is to group similar tasks together to avoid context switching. You know, that mental energy it costs to keep changing gears. By being super efficient in one area, she creates these huge pockets of time and energy that she can invest somewhere else. That's the compound effect right there. Saving small bits of energy that build into hours of focused, productive work.
So what can we all learn from her incredible journey? As we start to wrap this up, it really comes down to connecting her powerful why with her very practical how.
And this might be the most important piece of advice in this whole story.
She says you have to know why you're putting in all this effort. Because on those days when you just don't see any results, and trust me, there will be a lot of those days, that deep personal motivation is the only thing that's going to keep you in the game.
So here it is, the blueprint from her story. First, define your why. Figure out that deep, personal reason that's going to fuel you. Second, choose consistency over your feelings. Just repeating the action is way more important than waiting to feel motivated. Third, build a system, like task batching, to make being consistent easier. And finally, you have to trust the process. Understand that the results will show up, often when you least expect them, because they're built on all the work you've already put.
Which really just leaves us with one final question to think about. When you look at your own goals, what is the one small, consistent action you could start doing today that, over time, might just compound into something truly extraordinary?